Hey guys, and welcome back to the Bearded Chef. On today's episode, we're going to be going over how to make sourdough. First, we got to get started on the starter, which takes a while. It takes 7 to 10 days to get all that yeast and everything reacting. It's a natural fermentation process. So I'll be doing a little bit of showing you guys how to do that, and then we'll get into the actual baking and everything like that. So follow me over to the counter and we'll get started. So to get our starters started, we need to have a few ingredients. We need our bread flour and some warm water and one container. I'm using a plastic one. You can use a jar, but it should be a wide mouth and able to breathe to the air. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add our flour to our jar here, and then we're gonna add our water. So it's equal parts flour to water in weight. So it's 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. So you want to mix that up. This one looks a little bit dry, so I'm going to add a little more water. So now it's all incorporated. You're going to put the lid on it loosely and let that sit on the counter for the next 7 days. So there's a little bit more than just leaving this mixture on the counter for 7 days. We'll need to what we'd call feed it. And by feeding it, I mean adding equal parts flour and water. By doing that, we're going to be feeding the natural fermentation process, which is creating yeast. So when it gets to its highest peak on its day 7 or to 10, depending on the smell and the size of the bubbles and everything that's in it, we're going to use it within our baking. If you follow me over to the counter, I got a good example of what it should look like after 7 to 10 days and when we can use it to start baking. Alright, I'll meet you over there. So I now have this, and we can see it has risen. There's large bubbles, small bubbles. It's got a nice jiggle to it, and it has doubled in size. So once that goes, we need to now weigh out our ingredients to start kneading our dough. This is actually a no-knead dough. It's a slap and flip technique instead. So we will get to weighing up the ingredients. Now, I got my mixing bowl here, and I have already weighed out 350 grams of strong white red flour. So we're going to add that to our bowl. And then I've also measured out 100 grams of mixed wheat bread flour. Now, you don't have to mix flours if you don't want to. If you just want a plain white one, I'm going to go with a mixed grain sourdough this time. And always make sure to mix with your hands. Don't be using any special things to mix your flour around or get your hands dirty. Bread is about getting in there and getting it all nice and mixed through. So we have a total of 450 grams of flour here. To that, we are going to add 300 milliliters of water. So I'm just going to pour that water in. Little side note, make sure your water is a little bit warm. You don't want it too hot, just to get some of this process going. So get this all mixed up. My dough looks a little dry here. I'm gonna add a little bit more water. mixed up now. Now we're gonna let it sit on the counter for an hour in a process called auto-leasing. So it's just to get that gluten to start to form. Allow it go, and we're gonna cover this in plastic, and I will see you in an hour. Okay, so it's been an hour, and the auto-leasing process has fully commenced. And at this point, we're going to add our sourdough starter. If you follow me over, we will show you how to do that. Alright, as you can see, our dough is now nice and wet. Got a good stick to it. And we're going to put our starter in. So, one of the keys to mixing your starter in, make sure you have nice wet hands. And measure this out. Should be about 50 grams of starter for this recipe. Alright, so starter in. Make sure your hands are wet if I haven't already said that. Makes stuff a lot easier. The dough will less stick to your hands. So we're just gonna jab it around, making sure that we get this starter nice and incorporated into our dough. Alright, so it's starting to get there. Alright, so this process here we're going to start is we need to start developing that gluten. So what I want you to do is cup your hand and bring this up and back down like this. And we'll do this for a couple minutes. Okay, so our dough is nice and mixed up now, and we are going to recover this and let it sit for 20 minutes. And we will be back and to add our salt, and then with the rest of the process. So I'll see you in 20 minutes. Okay, for our salt mixture, we're going to grab 1.5 teaspoons of table salt and add that to about 30 milliliters of water. Adding it to the water just makes sure that it's actually distributed a little bit better, and we're just going to give this a little stir. Alright, so we're just going to dump that in there. And we're just going to give it a little mix up. And we are now ready to start doing our flip and slap technique. So we will get this right out onto our surface here. Make sure you have wet hands so the dough doesn't stick. And we are going to scoop, lift, slap, and flip. Turn, scoop, flap, slip. And we will do this for a couple minutes until we get a nice, smooth, shiny dough. Okay, so I think my dough is nice and ready to be put back into our bowl. So we will put it back into the bowl, just like that. Cover it, and back in 15 minutes we will do our stretch and fold technique. So until then, take a rest, and I'll see you back in 15. Okay, I'm back. So the little technique that we're going to do here is the stretch and fold, which allows all the gluten to line up and make a better crumb that's inside the dough. So let's get to the technique and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so we're gonna wanna uncover our dough and we're gonna wanna make sure our one hand is nice and wet so the dough doesn't stick to your hand. So we're gonna go down on the side here and we're gonna lift, stretching it almost to its peak, making sure not to rip it. We're gonna go around all the sides here and do it. It should be nice and stretchy just like I have, which means you have really good gluten production in your dough. So it's gonna go around, get all the corners and do that, and then you're just gonna recover it. Put your timer on for 15 more minutes and we're gonna repeat this process 3 more times. Alright, our flips are done and it's time to shape our dough. We will need some flour, a bowl, and a towel for this process, and some corn flour if you have it. So follow me over to the cutting board and we'll get to it. Okay, so we are just going to get our dough back out onto the counter. Just like that, and we're done with that bowl. We're going to want to grab a bench scraper or a dough cutter, some people would call it. And we're going to get it nice and wet, and we're just going to make sure to get this dough all nice and together. Okay, so with dry hands, we're going to give this a nice little coating of flour. You don't want to put too much on here. You just want to make sure just enough. And then with your bench, you're going to want to up and flip it over onto that floured side. So from here, we're going to want to flip. No, it's a little sticky. So we're going to want to flip our dough up, fold in, and then this one is going to come over and down. So we got a general shape here. We're just going to give it a little rock to close up that bottom. A little bit more flour just to coat this top. And there you have it. So we have our nice fluffy jiggly dough, and I have my bowl here ready, already coated in corn flour. So we're gonna go up in just like that, and we're gonna allow that to proof over the night in the fridge covered. You can use cling film or you can use a plastic bag like I'm going to. So, put that in there, close it up, and into the fridge. Our dough's now in the fridge and proofing over the night, so I will see you guys in the morning and we can get to baking this beautiful loaf of bread. Till then, bye.
Morning. Let's get this bread out of the fridge and start baking. So I'll meet you over by the counter. See you.
Now that the dough has proofed overnight, I've preheated the oven to 250 degrees Celsius. I've been preheating it for an hour just to get it nice and hot. Now I'm going to transfer the dough to a baking sheet and we'll go over the next process. Our dough's nice and proofed now. We're just going to give that a little light coating of flour over the top. so it doesn't stick to our pan here. And then we're just going to give this sheet pan a little dusting. Now, we're going to want to flip this and take off this. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Okay, at this point we are going to score our sourdough. So I have a nice little razor blade here, and you can do any little design that you want. Okay, now we got it all scored. We're going to put it into the oven. Alright, we'll get this bread into the oven, and to create a little steam, I'm going to toss a little water on the bottom. That will bake for 20 minutes, and then we'll lower down the temperature. Okay, so we got a nice, beautiful, dark crust on this. Way you can tell if your bread is done, flip it over, tap it, and then we're just gonna place that onto our cooling rack. And there you have it. That's how you make sourdough bread. So until next time, happy eating, and I'm the Bearded Chef.